Alright, let's get the difficult part out of the way right now. Wrestling this year just wasn't really it for me. By that I mean I just kind of felt so disconnected from it all. Whether it was WWE, AEW, Stardom, Marigold, Tokyo Joshi Pro, New Japan, whatever promotion I was tuning in for, it just seemed like my interest was at an all-time low. Wasn't really watching any product consistently. Many times when I was tuning in, it just kind of seemed like my attention wasn't even fully focused on the matches and product. Matches that I would normally have such excitement for either fell flat with me or just didn't garner the emotions I wanted. Many times I was left with just, meh, that was good, I guess. I mention all this basically to say I didn't watch a whole lot of wrestling this year, so this video might end up being shorter than last year's. There was still stuff I found great, but this year's top 10 was certainly more difficult than previous years where I really had to struggle to pick between matches. This year, it felt like I was almost disappointed to look at a match and think, is this really going to be in my top 10? As always though, these are just my opinions, and I obviously missed out on a lot of wrestling this year, but enough with the yapping. Let's get right into it and start off with Alright, I know what you're going to say. Stardom had a whole section dedicated to it last year, and now the category is just Joshi. To answer, I was in such a desperate search for wrestling this year that it led me to exploring so many different promotions. Even then though, I still am very much on the surface level, because this section is mainly, the three known promotions in the Joshi world: Stardom, Tokyo Joshi Pro, and Marigold. I still haven't looked into other promotions, but that just kind of goes to explain why we're looking at the categories Joshi now, because started tuning into a lot more, but again, not on a consistent level, and still very much on that surface level of the iceberg when it comes to Joshi wrestling. Also, you guys know me, I don't like being negative on this channel. I really firmly believe that you should only focus on talking about the things you like. But like I said, last year when it came to these sections for, last year was Stardom, AEW, WWE, you kind of have to be honest about, your issues with said promotions, and you don't want to really sugarcoat things, especially because when you do it that way, it doesn't really come off as negativity. It really comes off more as just, these are sort of the little criticisms I had. And my main criticism this year that resulted in me searching, in other promotions, was Stardom's booking this year was just kind of very confusing, especially at the start of the year. The start of the year was very much confusing. It obviously had a lot to do with the whole Marigold thing. They were having to try and figure out, well, who's staying, who's not, how do we book around a lot of this, It very much came off like they were trying to retool their promotion especially after some of their talent left. Like, everyone was expecting a huge mass exodus, you can even remember back to my video where I was thinking like, man, I wonder how many are going to leave. But some, not as many, but some talent left, so it very much came off as like a retool. They were very much trying to prepare for some of those leaving. They were very much trying to figure out who do they want in the books for their new plans, and it led to some odd booking decisions. There was a lot of quick title changes, and honestly, it just all kind of led to me viewing less and less, because it wasn't that it was bad, it was just very difficult to keep up with, especially as someone who wasn't finding as much time to watch any wrestling this year. It was very much difficult to keep up with, but that's the reason, just want to get that out the way. I still very much love Stardom's promotion. I love many of the wrestlers in it, but just very confusing, a very retooling year, hope for them to have a strong 2025. And we're going to start off this section with Stardom's Supreme Fight, where we saw Hazuki face off against Meisera for the high speed belt. If you know me, you know that high speed wrestling is one of my favorite styles from Stardom. Throw in two favorites of mine in Mei and Hazuki, and you had an early match of the year contender from Stardom. This match was really good. These two women worked so well together. Their offense is very creative and fluid. Hazuki's outside dives were really good. In this match, she hit like 3 of them in a row. I love that Hazuki's experience kind of played a big part in this match, such as, whenever May would kick out, she was locking in these various submissions, really keeping that pressure applied at all times. And, on some of these submissions, she is just wrenching on May's limbs. Like, it is crazy. Her face wash kicks are brutal as always, and I love her strikes. She really, she really tries to beckon May to go blow for blow with her, only to get brought down by a flurry of strikes, or sorry, well, May's the one that gets brought down. May Sarah, creative off the ropes, always one of the most fun wrestlers to watch. My only flaw with this match is the time limit draw. I remember when it happened, I was angry, but like in a good way, and I wanted them to run it back. And while I don't believe they ran it back one-on-one, they did run it back in a different way that we will talk about later. Moving forward, I want to make short note about Tokyo Joshi Pro's Grand Princess. There's a match from that card that we will talk about later as well. But the main one I want to talk about here, Minoru Suzuki facing off against Maki Ito. Just an absolute hilarious matchup. Murder Grandpa versus the cutest in the world. Made for the funniest watch experience this year for me. Just extremely funny. And what makes it funnier is the fact that it was an actual match. Like, you see this match on paper and you're thinking there's going to be a bunch of shenanigans, this and that. But, there are a lot of theatrics, there are a lot of hilarious spots. Like, the funniest standout spot is Minoru Suzuki making Maki Ito cry. And then he berates the ref, causing the ref to cry. But in between all those theatrics and funny, comedic spots, you get Minoru Suzuki and Maki Ito actually wrestling. And I love that Minoru Suzuki just doesn't hold back. This man is hitting her with chairs, he's hitting her with his usual strikes, and yet, Maki Ito is there to answer back with her kicks and, a slam. I love the spot where, she tries to hit a headbutt, but Minoru Suzuki counters it into a submission and then into a pinfall attempt. A hard fought effort and just a fun matchup, and an even funnier post-match segment where Maki Ito gives Suzuki the finger and he just simply grabs it and drags her by that finger all the way backstage. Taking things back to Stardom, where they were in Osaka, April 21st. Crazy Star, Mai Sara, and Suzu Suzuki took on Risa Sera and Hiragi Kurime, I believe is how it's pronounced, for Crazy Star's tag titles in Stardom, the Goddess titles. One of the best matchups for Crazy Star, especially because there's a lot of story with this matchup, seeing as you have Suzu with her current partner having to take on the two people that she was a part of a promotion with. She was part of the faction when they came to invade Stardom. A lot of story there, and that's kind of how things start out. You see Risa Sera and Kurime really take the action to the outside. This involves Risa Sera spinning Mai and throwing her into the audience chairs. You would think they want Suzu first, but by laying the beating on Mai, it means that Suzu kind of will have no one to tag to, in the later parts of this match. And that's sort of like their strategy, is they want to eliminate Mai so that they can just get all their focus on the one person they're here to beat up. And you see that a lot when Prominence is doing a lot of double team moves. They're, going after Suzuki especially, but Suzu, very resilient. She's doing her best to fight off both women, and that's kind of the story elements that you see. And I like that, Mai kind of plays very well off the others. I will always mention whenever we're talking about Hiragi Kurime, her strength unreal. I really love her as a powerhouse. Watching that pair with Mai's speed in this match was really great. It's a great tag match from the year, and it's one that only made me wish we had a longer tag run from Crazy Star. I mean, they still tag, but I'm talking about the tag title run. That was one of my biggest issues with Stardom this year, was they had a lot of interesting tag teams, but they would throw those tag belts on any of them so shortly. It was started there with Aphrodite, then it went to Crazy Star, then it went to FWC, then it went to, was it Shuri and someone else? I forget. And then isn't it on Momo and Konami right now? So it's they were going crazy with the title changes. But anyways, getting back into the positives, of course. With tag wrestling, we're going to stick with it as we go to Marigold's first show. In the main event, we saw Utami Hayashishita and Julia take on Sari and Bozilla. This entire match is all about showcasing the new talent in Bozilla. Just like a talent from NXT that we'll talk about later, Bozilla is still a bit green but showcases a lot of potential, immense power, instant connection with the crowd, and then you get 3 amazing wrestlers to aid her. I mean, you see, it's still crazy to me to think that we see Julia, Utami, and Sari all in one ring. Just very absurd. And they all do great work in this match. Sari is extra violent with Julia and Utami. And, it's a great main event to start a promotion off and really kind of showcase that, like, expect to see, well, obviously we knew Julia was going to be leaving soon, but it was like, when it came to Sari and Utami, it's like, even though Sari's a freelancer, this is what you can expect out of the main event scene, plus Bozilla, who's been doing good work over there. Sticking with Marigold, we're going to look at a recent matchup, a very recent one. This is from Winter Wonderland? Wonderful Fight? I don't know. I forget the name of the event, but it is Miku Ano versus Natsumi Shozuki. Both women have been such great discoveries for me this year. I'll talk about one of them later, but overall, a lot of fun watching both of these women's work in Stardom. That was the good thing with Stardom, was that, yeah, there was some talent coming over from Stardom, or sorry, that was the thing with Marigold, is that some talent were coming over from Stardom, but they introduced me to a lot that I just had never heard of, because again, I'm very surface level with the Joshi work. So it was very interesting to learn a lot of these new names, even if they've been in Stardom previously, or, have been wrestling for quite some time. And these 2 women have been some of my favorite to watch. I will say, I'm not the biggest fan of a champion challenging another champion, but this match is still great. Ano and Shozuki work really well together. Their styles really mesh well. There's a lot of emotion behind their wrestling. They have a lot of really compelling spots in this match. Natsumi can just bump and sell like a master, and she really kind of, to me, again, very new to her, so I don't know, and I don't know if people will agree with this, but to me, she almost seems like the blueprint for other younger favorites of mine, such as Azumi and Starlight Kid. She kind of seems like that blueprint for them, in the sense that, like, she has a lot of fast-paced offense, but is still well-versed in stuff like submissions and striking. Ano, on the other hand, with each match and defense, has just proven to be the perfect selection to be the first white belt champion in Stardom. Just amazing, compelling work from both women. I really enjoy them. And yeah, that closes this section for us. Like I said, expect a much shorter video this year. Like last year though, here are all the matches I just listed, along with other matches that I personally enjoyed but perhaps didn't have enough to say about. And not to spoil things, but if you see a match that I didn't talk about, it could potentially show up later in the top 10. That's a bit of a swear, but yeah, here are all the matches, like I said, that I just listed, personally enjoyed, maybe didn't have enough to say about, but overall, all the matches I kind of enjoyed from the Joshi world in 2024. On to yet another promotion, and we look at AEW's 2024. Like I said last year, and like I just said in the section previously, I don't like to talk about the negatives, but when it comes to retrospectives like this, you just can't act like everything is rainbows and sunshines. My main issue with so much wrestling this year, whether it was WWE or AEW, the 2 promotions I really had the most issue with this exact thing, was prolonged stories and predictability. Now, I don't have anything against long stories. I don't mind long-term storytelling, this is a common phrase. But I just kind of wish these companies were a bit more open to pivoting when something clearly isn't working. There were a lot of title runs this year, especially from a lot of the different companies that I was watching, that I just wish would have ended earlier, that I wish they would have just pivoted. Again, I understand that I am not the main audience, there's general crowd out there, but in my opinion, there was just stuff, and there was stuff that I was seeing other people agree that just wasn't working, but they kept going with it. And there was also times, like I mentioned, with the whole predictability thing, there was just so many times where you were able to see where a story and outcome was going months in advance, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it just kind of lessens everything that happens in between. So that's why I said, I just kind of wish they were more open to pivoting things, to going different routes. But still want to focus on the positives. And with AEW, we have some good positives here. Two positives from AEW for me were Darby Allin and Konosuke Takeshita. And coincidentally, the two started the year off for AEW with their match on the January 3rd edition of Dynamite. One of the most fun matches to start the year off. That reverse out of the suplex from Darby is amazing. The dive on the outside being stopped by Takeshita's knee. The multiple suplexes on the rampway. A fun back and forth with Takeshita getting the big win. Skipping forward though, to kind of summarize everything into one general section, let's get to the sentimental section, as I'll call it. Let's get it out the way, because Bryan Danielson had a plethora of matches this year that were just special to me. Seeing him run it back with Eddie Kingston in a brutal affair at Revolution was amazing and fun. I loved the story and was truly convinced that Bryan was going to rain on Eddie's parade here. Collision gave us the gift of seeing Bryan Danielson and Katsuyori Shibata in the same ring. Just so surreal to watch. Many had what I would call unrealistic expectations. I don't know what they were expecting, but me, I was pleased with what we got, and I actually thought that the two men kind of pulled out some crazy stuff given their health restrictions, you know. We got to see Danielson ascend to the top of AEW and have a killer match with Swerve, who deserves all the flowers in the world for playing his role perfectly in the feud in that match. We got the perfect flip of the coin with the post-match angle at All Out after such... No, All Out and Wrestle Dream, by the way. After such a picture-perfect moment of him ascending to the top at All In, at All Out, you have that post-match angle, and at Wrestle Dream, you have the match itself in post-match angle with the BCC. From the absolute highs of watching Danielson reach the top to watching our hero die in front of our eyes. Too broken down to really put up a fight. It was amazing stuff from them. And before that match at Wrestle Dream, getting to see Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness in the ring one more time together, so special to me and so many others. Like I said, the sentimental section, and from one sentimental moment to another, we look at the Revolution main event that saw us say goodbye to the icon. Sting and Darby Allin took on the Young Bucks, and it was such a fun match. Is it just the Bucks and Darby doing crazy stuff to make the Icon's last match memorable? For the most part. But is it still so much fun? Of course it is. You have Sting's sons, you have Darby taking that huge plummet off the ladder through the glass, Sting going wild one last time, just an absolute joy. And speaking of fun, the Casino Gauntlet at All In was also so much fun due to just the whole assemble of talent in the ring. While I didn't necessarily agree with the winner, again, it was just fun to see all those names and how they interacted with one another. Nigel McGuinness, Zack Sabre Jr., Ricochet, Kyle O'Reilly, Mark Briscoe, Kazuchika Okada, Roderick Strong. So many names that made for such a fun, chaotic match. Hangman was also in that match. Such, like I said, a fun, chaotic match. Was really glad they threw this one in on All In. It made for such a fun match, outcome aside. On that same show, Mariah May and Toni Storm capped off an amazing story that was built for so long. I loved the action. Toni was extremely brutal with some of her moves. And the one thing I'll always shout out with this match is I specifically love the contrast from Mariah May's hip strikes to Toni Storm's hip strikes. Mariah copied her, but Toni's were like really much more impactful. And I really like that they did that spot because it really sold what is kind of a headcanon in the wrestling world, that sometimes a move is more impactful when a certain wrestler does it, because you hear that argument so many times. How come when AJ Styles hits the Styles Clash, it's a finisher, but when this person uses it, it's not? And it's it's a headcanon, yes, but a spot like this kind of proves that like sometimes a move is more impactful depending on the wrestler that's doing it. Again, love the action in this match. Just barely misses out on my top 10, but I loved it. I love the story. Still going to this day, the story, as Toni has returned after taking a leave of absence, if you want to call it, because she was wrestling in other places, but like she took a break from AEW to have some matches, wasn't on TV, and now she's returned with her old, moniker. real great stuff, real fun stuff. Tony has been doing amazing work this year. We'll talk about her later. And finally, I mentioned being on an absolute high with the many moments of All In. You know, so much fun you're hearing me talk about. Well, All Out was such an absolute contrast, crazy contrast of All In. And of course, that all is definitely emphasized, I guess is the word, or like the true driving point to how much of a crazy contrast it is Swerve and Hangman. Those two are just insane. My 2023 Bryan Danielson MVP award winners just know how to make magic with each other on a show that was so crazy and violent, from Daniel Garcia's power driver on MJF to Willow and Chris, you know, and the BCC Danielson post-match segment after his title defense, all that craziness. And yet these two just found a way to amp that up by a million. These two found a way to truly showcase the hate that they have displayed throughout their feud, from Hangman lighting Swerve's home on fire. There is a cinder block in this match as a callback to their Full Gear match. There is a needle being driven into Swerve's cheek, and there's that head-on chair shot. I seriously wondered going into this match, how are they going to top the violence of the death match, especially given that it is unsanctioned, and they just had no issue. It is a horrifying match, but one that I enjoyed so much. These two are still my favorites and will always have my interest when they do their own work and work together. Amazing stuff to cap this section off. And I also want to use this little ending point to shout out other small stuff, such as Samoa Joe was being a great champion in his short time. Really enjoyed his little run. Willow winning the TBS title, even if it was short. Takeshita won the international title. They finally got a title on him. Daniel Garcia won the TNT championship. Private Party won the tag titles. I'm a bit upset about that because I had made a prediction at like the start of the year, or like the year before, or no, I think, it was right before Revolution when the Bucks, I was expecting the Bucks to win because it was Sting's retirement match. They ended up winning them later anyways, but I was like, if the Young Bucks have a run, what if they lose them on, I forget the date, but I was like, well, why would they lose them on this random episode of Dynamite? Because it would have been 5 years to the day when Private Party had eliminated them in the inaugural tag title tournament, you know, when they were trying to crown a tag champion. They had eliminated them, so like it was perfect. Dynamite was going to be on a Wednesday on the same day as it was 5 years ago. Could have happened. They did it a week later, which kind of annoyed me, but still was very happy to see them win the tag title. Just wanted to throw that a little bit out there. And again, as always, here are all the matches that I just listed, with other matches that I personally enjoyed, but again, perhaps maybe didn't have enough to say about, or will be mentioned later on. Another year of wrestling, another year of tuning in for WWE pay-per-views. As I will always say, just to let people know, I don't watch the weekly show, so I apologize if I miss anything from there. I'm really a very casual viewer of WWE. I tune in for the pay-per-views, cover them with a friend of mine, and that's about it, you know. But moving forward, just wanted to get that out the way. We start off with the Women's Royal Rumble. This year, I felt like it was such a big highlight for the show. If I remember from my watch, you know, I just kind of remember feeling that this Women's Rumble was very fluid. It felt like a lot of the participants had connected stories, you know, such as Naomi and Jordynne Grace interacting. And, you know, tying into that, that was another big thing, was big names like Jordynne Grace, obviously Bianca, Becky, Bailey, Io wasn't in there because she was champion. Nia was in there. Jade makes her debut, I believe, and she faces off with Bianca and Nia. Naomi, I think, was the big return, obviously. So there was a lot of big names in there. And again, going back to the main point, it felt cohesive and it made for an interesting Rumble. You know, I felt it was a lot better than the men's one. And I think the other thing too that added to it, again, going back to my whole point, I liked that this one was kind of unpredictable. A lot of us had a feeling Bailey was winning, but there was still that sense of unpredictability given the participants and the fact that there was so many choices that could have worked out with whatever, with my goodness, man, with whatever choice they could have picked. And I think that's why I enjoyed it a lot. You know, oh, I think Liv also returned in this Rumble. So like, again, more names, more unpredictability. Who knows what way they were gonna go. Real great stuff. From there, you know, we move on to our next match and we jump to WrestleMania Night 1. Sami Zayn looked to dethrone Gunther's Intercontinental title reign. This match was such a return to the Sami Zayn of old. The amazing classic babyface fight that I instantly loved from the first time I watched him. You pair that with Gunther being that fierce, hard-hitting general that he is, and it made for magic. My only complaint is kind of the whole story of Sami Zayn's family being ringside. It's not that I dislike it, but like the main reason I just don't like its inclusion is mainly for the part with Gunther, because I just felt it didn't match the sort of continuity of Gunther's character. It just kind of felt like focusing on it was such a distraction, you know, like, or sorry, not focusing on it was such a distraction. I felt like focusing on such a distraction doesn't match that sort of serious in-ring focus persona of Gunther. But then, you know, Sami Zayn hits that brain buster and I immediately shut up and cheer with joy, you know, because it's like, you can't focus on the little things. You just gotta take enjoyment in seeing stuff like this, and especially the fact that we get to watch babyface Sami Zayn win a singles championship. Back-to-back years, I get to see him get a major win at WrestleMania, and you know, it was fun to see. From here, we continue with Zayn's title reign. Very controversial title reign. We'll get into that later. But King and Queen of the Ring saw Sami Zayn defend that title against Bronson Reed and Chad Gable. Great match from the three men. A big clash of styles with each man contributing different elements to the match. And given it's the IC title, any of the three could have been seen as reasonable winners, you know, so it adds unpredictability to it. There are the story elements with Otis ringside, which, you know, contributed to Zayn being able to retain. I enjoyed this match a lot. And speaking of which, on that same show, we saw Lyra Valkyria and Nia Jax face off in the Queen of the Ring tournament finals. I was very intrigued to watch this match. Haven't seen much of Valkyria, you know, so I was very interested to see what it was going to be like. The match is great. David versus Goliath archetype. I was impressed with Lyra's moveset, and you know, the one thing that's been a talking point this entire year has kind of been Nia Jax's overall improvement. It was really fun to watch the two work together. Both women, I felt, had good chemistry, especially when it came to like bumping and selling one another's moves. And of course, that finish, a brutal finish that really just sold what a dominating force Nia was in this match. And finally, to close the WWE section, we look at what was probably their best main roster match, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, Hell in a Cell. An almost year-long rivalry that was capped off with a big-time match. This match was great and violent. I liked the variety of weapons and the use of the cage. I felt, you know, they did a lot with it, even though it was mainly just at the beginning. Drew was not holding back when it came to using the stairs. I was very excited to see blood drawn, you know, and made for a more compelling match. A big shout out to the picture perfect visual of blood pouring down McIntyre's face after he gets hit with that toolbox. There was extreme intensity to it. There was those freaking beads from the friendship bracelet, and then Drew landing back first on the steps was brutal as well. I really loved how both men really kind of sold the effects of this match afterwards. Overall, like I said, one of the best matches, especially probably the best match from the main roster this entire year. And that closes this section. And as far as other matches, unlike other sections, I don't have any to mention too much right now, as they might spoil the award section top 10. But again, here are the matches I listed and any other matches that I may have watched but didn't mention. And now, before the awards, we get to the rest of the wrestling world, the section meant for all the different wrestling I watched from various promotions. We start off Wrestle Kingdom 18, New Japan's big ol' event. We start off with Kazuchika Okada versus Bryan Danielson, another match of the year candidate from the very beginning of the year. Given Bryan was not dealing with an arm injury for a good portion of the match, it is no surprise that I think this one was a huge improvement. Not huge, but I think it is definitely an improvement from the Forbidden Door match from the year before. I enjoyed the dynamic in this one a bit more. The two seemed to mesh better, especially after getting that sort of trial match at Forbidden Door. Not a whole lot to say other than just a great match from two of the top wrestlers. The next two matches don't need a whole lot from me, given I talked about the whole entire trilogy in a video. We are of course talking about the GYV versus the ABC over in TNA, but more specifically the first and third match of those installments. First match took place on TNA TV, third one took place at TNA's No Surrender. That first match, the reason I enjoy it so much is because it was a great match on its own, but what elevates it is just how well it worked as a setup. The first match between these two teams laid the groundwork for the following two matches. From how the match dynamic to the story elements, it did everything. The scarf, Bay's role as the Iron Man of the duo, Ace Austin's arm injury, ABC going down 1-0, thus causing them to be viewed as underdogs as the champions. Amazing stuff that the following matches were able to build on perfectly. If you want to hear more, like I said, there's a video on the trilogy. Very underrated work from two of my favorite tag teams. Finally, we go back to New Japan to talk about Konosuke Takeshita's G1 Climax match against Yuya Uemura. Again, want to hear more details, go check out my video on Takeshita's amazing G1 run. Some of his best work and one of the best recent G1 performances. His match with Uemura was honestly one that I battled with another match of his as to what would be in my top 10. Spoilers. Ultimately, Kimura gets edged out, but that doesn't take anything away from this match. You get amazing technical work. You get Takeshita working with one of the young stars New Japan is hoping to rely upon. The crowd is great. The action is great. One of my favorite matches from the year. So intense. Had me on the edge of my seat. And with that being said, you're like, oh, that was like, what, 3-4 matches? Well, I don't want to spoil too much, but by me saying that, I end up spoiling more. But with that being said, here are all the matches I just listed, as well as some other matches that I personally enjoyed. We get the point now. And now, before we get into our top 10 matches of the year, what everyone comes for each year, as we established last year, it is time for the awards. I created my own awards as a way to highlight and give flowers to various wrestlers who had stellar years. Maybe some that I didn't talk about because there's various reasons that could lead to me not talking about them. Maybe I just felt that they had, maybe good. I forget how this one YouTuber I watch refers to it, but basically like maybe they had a lot of output, but maybe not enough to talk about. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. Let me just stick to the script. Basically, if you don't remember how it works, I will, this is obviously again to highlight certain wrestlers, and I may give a few honorable mentions. And from there, what I do is I give a short list, usually limited to 4, and then I give the award out. And like I said last year, to make things a bit more fun, I took inspiration from college football and named these awards after some of my favorites. So with that being said, here we are, 2 years running now, the Triple Crown Podcast Wrestling Awards of 2024. All right, to start off, I want to keep things consistent year to year, so I'm more than likely going to keep the same order that we established last year. And so that means we start off here with the final countdown Entrance of the Year award. Some honorable mentions for this category go to Deonna Purrazzo at Revolution and Natsupoi at Stardom's Yokohama Budokan. I have to shout out Deonna simply for her beautiful gear of Revolution. I am very, very tempted to create an attire award next year, because her entrance and gear, there was so much amazing gear from this year, but hers this year at Revolution, I thought, it was simple, but I just found the colors and overall entrance very pleasing. And I want to mention Natsupoi because I believe it was her return that night from injury, and she returned in style, a very grand entrance and gear to go with it. Getting into our short list, just like last year, the eponym of the award is not the winner. Bryan Danielson makes the shortlist once again, paired with Swerve for their dual entrances at AEW All In. The two men's entrances encapsulated that big match feel. They looked like stars and only added to the allure of their main event. Next, coming off a big heel turn, Saya Kamitani had many of us wondering what the heel turn was going to be like. How was this uber babyface going to play a heel? What was going to be different about her? Well, her new music starts sounding very similar to her former tag partner's old theme, and then enters the phrase, "The Golden Phoenix is dead," followed by Dark Wings taking over the throne. Saya comes down in this beautiful, sleek black robe. What used to be the Queen's Quest flag is now a symbol of Kamitani's new attitude and arrogance, and now is the era of the Phoenix Queen. What a way to establish a new chapter for the next direction of Saya Kamitani. And I also want to quickly make note, I had planned to make a video about her heel turn, but scrapped the video halfway through the script. Sorry. Next, we have Sami Zayn's entrance, Sami Zayn for his entrance when Raw came to Montreal. There was ever a sign that the product would be changing under the new regime, it was this entrance. Gone were the days of Kevin Dunn's excessive camera style, and in is this beauty of an entrance. Starting at the front, the camera follows with no cuts as Zayn walks through his build hometown crowd, hyping him up, and he then makes his way down to the ring, grabs a Canadian flag from someone in the crowd, wraps it around his shoulders, and has one of the best entrances of WWE's new era so far. Coming in as the runner-up for the award, the dual entrances of Io Sky and Utami Hayashishida at Marigold Summer Destiny. So much that is great about this entrance, both women donning their Queen's Quest inspired masks, their entrance gear just is amazing, the camera work is amazing, the lighting, the theatrics, just perfection. But there is one better. We arrive at our award winner, and it goes to Kazuchika Okada at Wrestle Kingdom 18. Okada makes his way in some beautiful all-white gear. However, he stops his entrance, the lights go out, and on this stage we see this device slowly start to lower. And as the light descends over Okada, we begin to see his coat change and have its designs revealed. Then the coin drops again, and as the golden lighting and confetti fills the ramp, we see him make his entrance, and it's a crazy entrance. I really enjoyed it. Very creative, and I don't know. The moment I saw it at the start of the year, I was like, I don't think anything's stopping this entrance for me. Kazuchika Okada, Wrestle Kingdom 18, the 2024 Final Countdown Entrance of the Year award winner. Next, an award that admittedly has never had a name. We look to our Show of the Year award, given to the show that I just enjoyed the most. And it's funny because kind of hard to give a Show of the Year award when I didn't really enjoy much wrestling this year, right? Well, let's start with our short list. Marigold Summer Destiny makes its way onto the list. This show saw Marigold crown a lot of their inaugural champions on the show. Natsumi Shozuki and Misa Matsui had a great match to crown the first Superfly champion. Miku Ano ran the gauntlet and beat both Mirai and Bozilla back-to-back to become the inaugural white belt champion. It saw a dream match between Io Sky and Utami Hayashishida, and in the main event, it saw Julia and Suri battle for the right to be Marigold's inaugural red belt champion. Suri would be victorious, which kind of sent shockwaves to the rest of that roster because they had to watch an outsider be their promotion's first champion and claim that title of ace. King and Queen of the Ring is another show that I enjoyed from WWE this year, mainly carried by the aforementioned IC Triple Threat and Queen of the Ring finals, but I didn't think Liv and Becky was too bad, although what has followed with that title reign hasn't necessarily been a favorite of mine. Gunther and Randy was good as well. Next, If AEW knows how to do one thing, it is having their pay-per-views hit on a positive rate. Revolution this year was no different. I always say that if there is an AEW pay-per-view that you're going to tune in for, Revolution is probably your best bet, while the other pay-per-views, especially from their big four, have kind of had some duds in their history. Revolution so far, to me, has a 100% hit rate of just being a banger pay-per-view each year. And I have to mention it. Side note, look man, I don't want to go crazy ranting, but of course, just like how I mentioned in the Kendrick Lamar video, of course, I say all this, throw all this praise at Revolution, and of course, Revolution comes to LA the moment I move. AEW, I hate you. Moving forward though, the show starts off good with Christian and Daniel Garcia. Then you get Eddie and Danielson, like I mentioned. You got Roderick Strong, he becomes international champion after completely battering a broken down Orange Cassidy. The BCC and FTR have a good match that admittedly takes a while to heat up. Storm and Peraza were alright. Takeshita and Ospreay go off. Joe, Page, and Strickland have a great story-filled triple threat. And again, like I said, the main event sees an emotional fun affair as we say goodbye to the icon. But, of course, we arrive to our award winner, and there's so much that goes into this show being the winner. The matches, the contrast from All In, and the glorious, glorious Valence. All Out 2024 was my favorite show this year. While All In was this magical moment, All Out was just crazy. First off, the matches. MJF and Daniel Garcia were good. Ospreay Pac was great. We will talk about Chris and Willow later. Spoilers. Okada, Takeshita, Briscoe, and Cassidy have a fun four-way match. The violence, as I mentioned though. Daniel Garcia goes crazy on MJF after their match. Chris and Willow had one of the best women's matches in this company's short history. After a, in my opinion, wasted title defense, we saw the BCC murder our hero Danielson. And with no time to recover from that, we see Swerve and Hangman try to kill each other for 30 minutes in the main event. All Out had my attention for the entire show. That just kept getting crazier and crazier, and that's why I just have to award it. It was such a surreal show that captured my attention. AEW All Out 2024, the 2024 Show of the Year award winner. Next is our Future Sight Award. Being up front, there isn't actually a winner for this award. It just kind of mainly serves as my way of saying, hey, keep an eye out for this name or these names in the next year. As I said last year, it isn't necessarily the biggest names, just names I think that we can expect to have a big year, or at least I can expect to have a big year. And also, like last year, I'm not trying to be like super obvious with them, Last year, my list was Miyu Watanabe, Trish Adora, Queen Aminata, Konosuke Takeshita, Rush, the Grizzled Young Veterans, and Suri. Almost went 7 for 7, but Rush didn't do that much this year. Kind of due to injury, I think it was more for the most part. But looking at him, Miyu finally won the big one. Adora and Aminata got a lot of time between Ring of Honor and AEW with, I believe Queen Aminata won a title in Ring of Honor. Either her or was it Red Velvet? One of the two won. I know Red Velvet won, I think it was it the TV title? Or did Aminata win that? Man, I don't remember. But, still, Adora and Aminata got a lot of time on Ring of Honor and AEW, so was real happy to see that. And again, that's kind of the big thing about this criteria. I'm not saying like, oh, they're going to win the world title. They're going to do like, I'm just expecting them to have good years in terms of match quality, in terms of, just getting overall TV time, Takeshita went crazy, so crazy in the G1 tournament that the AEW, they just had to acknowledge my man, and he goes out there and wins the international title. The Grizzled Young Vets, they had a lot of great work scattered around the wrestling world. Like I said, they had a great trilogy in TNA, had some appearances in AEW. Suri went crazy this year, is on top of multiple promotions. So, how about next year? Well, my first pick has already begun getting vignettes. Bandito is hopefully returning from an injury, and or I guess it depends on when this video comes out. As I'm recording, there's vignettes, so he's hopefully returning from this injury, or by the time this comes out, maybe has returned. I don't know yet. I think we can expect big plans for the Luchador in 2025. That's just me though. Our next pick just got injured, but I still expect big things when he returns. Bronson Reed has been a favorite of mine for so long. He did such great work this year that he got a spot in the company's biggest feud. When he returns from injury, I just expect some singles gold in his 2025. Big things for the man. I personally would like to see him stick with this new bloodline because I think him and Jacob Fatu could work really well together. But, overall, I'm excited for his 2025. The next one, Tavion Heights had a great showing in Noah's N1 tournament and really showed his potential. Like I said in the video with him coming out, I was expecting maybe something big by the end of the year, but I think we can expect more of him in 2025. Still very young, so I could potentially see maybe something in the tag division or singles, who knows, depends on the leaps that he makes, but I think he could have a pretty good 2025. And maybe kind of obvious picks, but I think Athena and Bianca Belair can have some big years in 2025. I know those are really big names and I try to avoid the big names, but the main reason I think so is that, Athena making her way to AEW television more than likely, and Bianca's kind of being set up to return to the singles, division. So I don't know, she has some pretty big feuds lined up for her. I think could expect a lot out of her, and overall just very excited for both women's 2025. And finally, I want to be a bit out there with my last pick. Now, we obviously know nothing about contract status, and I'm not trying to make any assumptions on contract status, but that's kind of sort of why this isn't a wild card pick in a sense. I personally believe, and again, I don't want to try and be negative. I personally believe that if the Street Profits were to leave WWE, if their contracts were to have come up, or if their contracts are coming, again, I don't know any contract. This is just a wild card pick, but I think they were to leave WWE, they could have a big year, mainly just because WWE doesn't really have a clue what they're doing with their tag division. They have so many teams, they have so many factions, and yet it doesn't seem like there's a clear direction. The Motor City Machine Guns coming in kind of gives me hope, but I have to see it to believe it when it comes to that tag division. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get into negatives, but you just have so many teams doing nothing, The Street Profits haven't been doing nothing for such a long time. The championships themselves have yet to be featured on a pay-per-view since WrestleMania, so it's like, I don't know. There's nothing currently that shows me that the profits will be valued or used properly. So, I think if they leave and, go to various promotions, doesn't matter where to me, just somewhere that sees the value in tag team wrestling, I think they could have a pretty big year. But ultimately it comes down to their personal decision, obviously, and who knows what the contract is. But hey, I can hope that they have a big year in WWE, but I just don't see it with the way the tag divisions are right now. Like I said, I think they could just do better work in a variety of different promotions, and I would have to say, even though it's the wild card pick, that's probably my main pick for our 2024 Future Sight Award. And now we move on to our Hana Kimura Discovery of the Year Award, given to a wrestler who I watched for the first time this year, perhaps, So we start off Yuya Yamura, a wrestler I often heard about, but never really watched. While I mainly only saw his G1 work, I still enjoyed a lot of it. I recognized the flaws that many have pointed out, but in that small sample size, I really enjoyed what I watched. And similar to that, Tavion Heights is in that same boat. Did a video on him. Like I said, showcases a lot of potential, and it was fun watching him build a connection with that Japanese audience. As mentioned earlier, Natsumi Shozuki was an instant favorite of mine from her first match in Marigold, and from that point on, I was tuning into her matches, excited to see more. Almost like appointment viewing almost. I've been really enjoying her Superfly run. But our last two picks, man, were they something else. I didn't watch much NXT, but man, was I an instant fan the moment I watched Obafemi. all the potential in the world for this beast, man. I am so excited for his future and his run, that is going to follow. This year, this upcoming year, 2025, is going to be a fun one to follow with Obafemi. But the winner of this award is such a surprise for me. When it came to the promotion of DPW, all I kept hearing was the name Jake something. And to me, I was like, I remember that name from TNA. I never watched any of his matches, but I remember that name from TNA. Why? I was curious. I was like, why is, there's such hype around this name in the indie scene, Believe me, the hype is very real. The work this man did, both with Mike Bailey and solo, was amazing. Just like Femi, an absolute beast that has unreal work. Some of my favorite watches this year came from Jake and Bailey. Super shocked by the man's sky-high improvement. One of my favorite watches this year, Jake something, the 2024 Hana Kimura Award winner. Next is our Katsuyori Shibata Comeback of the Year Award. Straightforward as always. Wrestlers who are coming back from an injury and had great years with, typically more severe injuries, kind of getting more favor from me, but, like I said, it's typically about injuries that cause them to miss time, especially from the previous year, thus the comeback part. And again, it's straightforward. I don't really know why I'm explaining this. An honorable mention I have to give, even though he didn't necessarily miss time, is Seth Rollins. I just have to give, Rollins his flowers for battling through all those injuries, because the man was basically held together by thoughts and prayers, so I have to give it to him, but also at the same time, kind of wish he just had taken time off, but he still pushed through it all. But getting into our short list, it starts off with Jamie Hayter. Did she have a stellar year? No, but she barely returned it all in, and from that point, has she had like a stellar year? No, but again, I didn't really expect anything crazy when you're coming back from such a severe injury. It's kind of like Malachi Black, where it was like an injury that really made her contemplate retirement, and I'm just super glad to have her back, and just glad that her and AEW have been taking things lightly, like they've been taking things light, easy, letting her ramp her way back up. Glad that, that's the direction they've taken. And another name that came back from a pretty severe injury was Wesley, another back injury that almost made the talent retire. Take a second and really appreciate, first off, the doctors and specialists that are, there to, make it so that these wrestlers are able to recover, and as also appreciate the talent. Wrestlers have such a difficult job that isn't guaranteed, so just show some appreciation every now and then, because you never know when things can come to an abrupt end. Anyways, though, it was a good year for Lee. He had some great work in the NA title scene, as well as the mini reunion and feud with the Rascals. Just like last year, though, our runner-up isn't someone who is coming back from a physical injury. Bo Dallas, just like Mark Briscoe last year, is one of the strongest persons on the planet. Bray Wyatt passing away was such an unexpected blow to the wrestling world, such a heartbreaking event that nobody could have seen, and like Mark, I would have not held it against Bo if he chose to leave wrestling altogether. But Bo chose to keep going and to keep his brother's legacy alive, and that led to just the sheer realness behind so many of the Wyatt Six's promos. Just absolutely gut-wrenching, especially Bo and Eric, to be able to take their real-life feelings and create such amazing character and promo work out of it was unlike anything else this year. And, but, as always, I kind of want to keep the parameters of this award to the physical injury aspect, but that isn't going to stop me from, like last year and this year, always giving flowers to those like Mark and Bo who suffer such extreme loss and just continue on. All love to both men for being just so strong and staying in an industry that has such close ties to those that they lost. But we get to the winner of our award, and for this one, I went with Kyle O'Reilly. 647 days from June 8th, 2022 to March 16th, 2024. That is how much time passed between Kyle's last match before injury and first match back from injury. Just seriously all the props in the world to these men and women. Like I said, at some point during that time, you just have to imagine the thoughts start to creep in, like, was that seriously my last time and I didn't even know? Kyle came back and had such a great year, with a lot of great work being done as a part of the conglomeration. And, I just have to mention, this award is going to be stacked next year, because you have Eddie Kingston, Ilya Dragunov, Asuka, Bronson Reed. Like, there's so many names that got injured this year that will be making their comebacks hopefully next year. Like I said, stacked next year. But anyways, Kyle O'Reilly, the 2024 Katsuyori Shibata Award winner. Next is our 2024 Steenerico Feud of the Year Award. I want to make this clear right now. It isn't about the length of the feud, it is about the content of the feud. Just because a feud goes for a long time doesn't mean it's going to be here. I kind of feel like this preface is telling of who my award winner is, but on we go. Honorable mentions to Sammy and Gunther and Danielson in the BCC. A lot of great work there. Starting the short list off, GYV versus ABC and TNA. Don't really have to say much about this. I've been mentioning it all video and have a video on it. Next, Sami Zayn and Chad Gable. That heel turn where Chad pries Zayn from his wife's arms with a German suplex. Chef's kiss, man. Yeah, it kind of sucked that Chad never got his big win, but the feud made for some great matches, promos, and moments like that heel turn. Next, Chris Statlander versus Willow Nightingale. Perfect feud. I wish it got more spotlight on some of AEW's bigger shows, but overall it was great work. The matches, the build, the climax at All Out. Such great work from these two women's. Just kind of ignore the Statlander stuff after the feud. I don't want to get into it. Oh my gosh, we're not getting into it. We're not getting into it. And now, our runner-up, which is certainly not going to cause any controversy, and people will surely understand it's just my personal opinion, right? Anyways, my runner-up is CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. Let all chaos ensue. But first, just let me explain myself, please. Did Drew and Punk have some of the best work this year? Yes. Their promos were great. It was a feud that spanned the whole year and never really felt stale to me. Drew did some career work in this feud. But I'm sorry, I can't put it at the top spot when I didn't enjoy some of the matches that followed. There was a lot of great moments in this feud, but at the end of the day, it always comes down to personal enjoyment. And if you're mad, go make your own list. I ain't nothing stopping you, from making your own list. But to me, their initial match and the strap match were not it for me. It was such an intense feud, and we're letting Seth Rollins and touching four corners interrupt that. They showed glimpses, like at the start of the first match where the two men were just having this like pure brawl. I really enjoyed that, but the two matches just didn't at all match the feud the way the Hell in a Cell match did. Like, it was so simple. Just in a regular match, just let them beat the hell out of each other. Just let them whip the hell out of each other when you're talking about the strap match. Why do we have to distract ourselves with four corners? Why do we have to distract ourselves with Seth Rollins getting involved with a bracelet? See what y'all do? I'm supposed to be speaking on the positives of this feud, like Drew and Punk cutting vicious promos on one another, Drew being the villain despite being in the right, and both men burying the Crimson Mask in Hell in a Cell. Great stuff. And instead, here I am having to explain why it lands in the runner-up spot instead of just simply talking about the good stuff. So sorry for ranting, but nonetheless, it was a great feud that had some great work from both men involved. But so what is the winner? After all that, I don't even know if I want to say it, but let's just get it out the way. We have our first back-to-back winners in the award show history. I mean, yeah, last year was the inaugural, but first back-to-back winners. Hangman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland once again did great work. Two of my absolute favorites. Did they have a year-long feud? Not really. It was kind of spaced out, but they created compelling work whenever the two of them were just involved, and they built upon their feud last year even more. The triple threat with Joe was real great. Hangman was a man hell-bent on getting back at Swerve, And just like Drew, Paige kind of tells this complex story of the people's hero being looked at as the villain despite doing nothing wrong. Paige, like Drew, has all the reason in the world to hate Swerve. To build on 2023, they switched roles and somehow still played them to perfection. We saw, like I mentioned, Hangman burning the house down, and his promo in front of that, that promo in front of the burning house was insane. The match at All Out is especially what propels it to this top spot to me, because that match just exemplifies the pure hatred, truly showcases the true disdain from this feud. The utter pure violence is what you would expect from the hatred and disdain that these two men, displayed building up to this point, and it convinces you of that hatred. Whenever these two men work together, I am just always fully immersed into the sport of professional wrestling. Nothing this year really came close to those closing moments of All Out, because nothing to me, we're talking about moments this year, nothing to me tops when the match is over, they're raising the cage, they're checking on Swerve. Hangman Adam Page is standing at the very top of the entrance ramp, usually where you would see a celebration, but he stands there and he looks on almost with remorse in his eyes, feeling that the madness has driven him too far. He takes a couple of steps forward, almost as if the compassion in his heart is wanting him to help Swerve. And then you get this perfect moment where the hero, who once had this audience cheering for his journey, waiting to see him ascend to the top, this hero now has to watch that same crowd shriek in horror at the mere thought that he might be stepping forward to inflict more damage. Hangman at that point can only succumb to the madness, knowing that he's lost the crowd that once loved him. He is now only a man left to be feared. Hangman and Swerve, the 2024 Steenerico Award winners. Well, we now move on to our AZM Champion of the Year award. Once again, kind of hard to give this award when I don't watch that much wrestling this year, but to start our short list off, Miyu Watanabe and her reign with the POP title over in Tokyo Joshi Pro. She finally won the big one, man. She finally won the big one, and she's not disappointed so far. She is still currently champion at the time of this script, around like 260 something days, maybe up to 270, I don't know. Loved her match against Rika Tatsumi. She had real great defenses against Shoko and Rio as well. Next up, Obafemi's North American title reign was a good one. 273 days with some impressive defenses against Dragon Lee, Dijak and Briggs in that triple threat, Wes Lee, Tony D'Angelo. A lot of good work, and is looking to elevate himself into the NXT title scene now. Really hoping he can, be a sort of an adrenaline shot to that division. Next, like I mentioned earlier in the WWE section, a controversial one, but I actually enjoyed Sami Zayn's IC title reign. 119 days with some fun matches, Gable, Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker. Hated by a lot, but I enjoyed it. Our runner-up for the award is Hayata and Yohei with Noah's junior heavyweight tag titles. Currently, they're around like at 100, maybe 10 days, I forget. They broke the 100 mark. And overall, they've just been a fun tag team to watch. I don't know much about Noah, as I always mention, but I've enjoyed their defenses. They've had a bunch of good defenses, such as they defended against Lyko's Gym. They defended against their fellow Rattel members, Kotoge and O'Hara. But my favorite title reign this year belongs to Mike Bailey and Jake Something's 273-day reign with the DPW tag titles. Winning them against the Motor City Shinguns, I believe. They had defenses against the likes of Calvin Tankman and Titus Alexander, the ABC, and then losing them to Violence is Forever recently. I still need to watch that match, find a place to watch it, or simply just wait for Wrestle Universe to have it up later on, probably sometime next year. But overall, amazing work from these two. Just really made me enjoy some tag team wrestling this year after the past couple of years have kind of been down years. Mike Bailey and Jake Something, 2024 AZM Award winners. And now our Swerve Strickland Most Improved Award. Going to be a very short section because there's not much to choose from, given that Many didn't really have down years last year to really improve upon, and there weren't really many like young prospects that made humongous leaps. Maybe next year we'll have a better pool to pick from. So these are kind of just some names. I don't really have really a short list. We have Otis for his short feud with Gable and the work he's kind of done this year. I don't know. He's still pretty much a comedic character, but I kind of liked a lot of the improvements he showed as a character when you're looking in the realm of a more serious story like he did with Chad Gable. Though I've always enjoyed his work, I feel like Bronson Reed definitely skyrocketed his stock with his work this year. And again, it sucks that he's going to be out for a bit because it felt like he just could have kept building and building. But super excited for when he comes back. Nia Jax, of course, has made some big improvements this year. I personally feel the booking the past couple of months with her as champion has kind of done her no favors. Still, though, she's improved a lot compared to previous years. And just can hope they utilize her better like they were at the start of the year. But overall, I guess if I like had to give it to like someone, even though like none of these really kind of fit the criteria that I'm looking for, I feel like the one I would probably give it to this year is Chelsea Green and Piper Niven's work as a tag team. You know, it's not like they weren't good in previous years, but I just feel like the work they've done this year is great, and especially character-wise, overall they've just been very entertaining and fun to watch, and probably who I would give the 2024 Swerve Strickland Award to. Next, on to the big three of the award section. First, our Aphrodite Tag Team of the Year award. Man, what a difference a year makes. Aphrodite ain't even a tag team anymore, man, let alone in the same company. But we must carry on. Even if tag wrestling hasn't been that great these past 2 years, and even if one of my favorite tag teams is now broken up, splitting apart, the faction that they came from doesn't even exist anymore after this year. We must carry on, though. We must carry on. Starting off with some honorable mentions. ABC for their great work in TNA as always. One of the main highlights for me to tune into that company. Stat and Willow for their awesome tag work before feuding was pretty great. And Fraxium as a, hey, I'm mentioning you to give credit despite not watching a single match. I've heard great things about you and want to acknowledge that, and probably should get on the wave soon. But as I say that, they'll probably break up soon and I'll be too late if we're being honest. But yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about them, just haven't had the time to really tune into any of their stuff. But shortlist time. I'm going to say it now. I expanded this to factions and trios because if I didn't, there would be like 3 choices. So I want to shout out Stardom for picking the fun route with many of their talents. And by that, I mean, there were so many that didn't have a faction. Suzu Suzuki, Mei Sarah, Starlight Kid got kicked out of Oedo Tai. Azumi and Miyu were left factionless post Queen's Quest disbandment. So rather than just throwing them into other factions, they just said, hey, let's have all the fun wrestlers be in a single faction, and thus Neo Genesis was born, and this quintet is a lot of fun. AEW did something similar with their faces, and that resulted in the conglomeration. Just a fun faction that did a lot of fun segments and matches. To be honest, I'm kind of so out of tune with AEW that I was wondering if they were still a thing, but I did see on Willow's story that her and, was it Cassie? I think it was her and Cassie. They went to support Mark Briscoe after one of his Continental Classic matches, I think. So I think they're still a thing, and they've been a lot of fun. They've had a lot of fun matches and segments, and have definitely been the one group that's been putting out a ton of output this year, So I've been having joy watching them. The Grizzled Young Vets, like I mentioned, they had a lot of fun work. Trilogy with ABC, fun work with the Rascals and other promotions. They had a match in Rev Pro, or a couple matches probably, matches in AEW. The runner-up for our awards is just like the championship one, Hayata and Yohei. As I mentioned in that section, they just are having a great run, and I've enjoyed everything about them. Their presentation, their matches, all of it has my interest this year. But just like that section, our winner is also the winner of the AZM Award, Mike Bailey and Jake Something. Not much to say other than pure entertainment. The two work so fluidly, their dynamic pairs well. Makes for compelling matches. I really enjoyed them, like especially when Mike Bailey is playing Iron Man and Jake something is there to, get the hot tag and essentially be the Hulk of the group. Just some of the best tag work this year and the 2024 Aphrodite Award winners. Wait a second. Where's the Women's Award? Well, I mentioned wanting to keep things kind of consistent, but I think what I want to do with these two awards is kind of switch them depending on which I personally feel was more important year to year in a sense. And to me this year, I just felt that the women were on top of things more and more important, probably what I watched a lot more too. So I'm going to go with the men's one first. Women's will get the highlight this year and we'll see what happens year to year. But let's start off with our honorable mentions for the Bryan Danielson MVP Award given to the Men's Wrestler of the Year. Gotta, like I said, honorable mention, Sammy for his work, Gunther for his mix of IC and world title work, Darby Allin for just so many crazy antics this year. The man puts his body on the line simply for the love of the game. But let's get into our short list. Let's talk about last year's co-winners, Swerve and Hangman. Like I mentioned, they just did incredible character work this year. They did great work in ring. We talked in detail about Hangman. Swerve himself has elevated himself even further this year, using that momentum to capture the world title in AEW. He had a great reign and kept himself in the spotlight post-title run. He's just great. Can never say it enough. Inosuke Takeshita, honestly, wouldn't have even sniffed the shortlist probably, to no fault of his own, by the way, if I may say, but his G1 performance, legendary stuff. And it's a run that, like I said, AEW was almost forced to capitalize on. I mean, if you don't do anything with him after all that buzz that he created, you shouldn't run a wrestling promotion, in my opinion, because the buzz that he created from that G1 performance was amazing. But guess what? They did capitalize on it. They give him that international championship. Still wish he was away from Don Callis, especially since his G1 performance really kind of showed that he didn't need him, but it's great stuff from Takeshita, and I only expect better in 2025. Our runner-up for the award, Drew McIntyre. Drew, my man, career year. Sad you weren't rewarded a title run, with either of the titles, but the best thing to watch on WWE this year. Amazing character work, amazing promos, still can have a great match. Carried CM Punk all year. This is just an ongoing joke between my dad, a friend, and I. I mean, any other year and Drew would have taken it easily, but alas, there was one better. In fact, it was the GOAT himself saying, "You really think I'm not going to win my namesake award once before retiring?" Bryan Danielson, a year to remember. What more do you want me to say? He is my personal GOAT, and this year he just had good match after good match, ascended to the mountaintop on the big stage once again, got murdered like multiple times to really establish the new direction of the BCC, has probably retired from full-time wrestling. Call it bias, but again, when wrestling wasn't hitting, Danielson was almost always there to get me to watch. Always my favorite, and it makes me sad that he's retired from full-time competition and John Cena's next. Those two are my GOATs. Really makes me wonder, is my interest going to fade with them leaving? But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But until then, Bryan Danielson, the 2024 Bryan Danielson MVP Award winner. And now we close our award section with the Akira Hokuto, I always forget how to pronounce her last name, Women's MVP Award. Some honorable mentions: Nia Jax, Mariah May, Natsupoi, Hazuki. Just want to shout them out. But getting into the short list, starting off with Toni Storm, one of the most interesting and compelling stories in the women's wrestling sphere this year. I mean, seriously, to take such a character and make it work deserves all the props in the world. I have just also enjoyed the overall character, but have enjoyed that she's been able to take criticism with this character and using it to improve. Like, many critiqued her that her in-ring work was kind of being affected by the character, and she adjusted. She had a great title reign, and like I mentioned earlier, she's expanding on it by returning to her old character and acting like that timeless stuff didn't happen. And there's so many ways to go from it. Like, some people are thinking that it's timeless Toni Storm faking the whole thing to get back at Mariah. Some think it's timeless Toni Storm playing the role of the rocker Tony Storm. So many ways to go with it. Next, EO. EO has been one of my favorites for a while, and I was happy to see her have such a fun year. She was champion for a portion of it, then spent the rest doing a lot of fun stuff with Kairi. One of the best in-ring talents that WWE has, I would argue, maybe the best, probably. I always go back and forth between her and Bianca, but I might give the edge to EO. But you know, like I said, one of the best, and all you can do is just hope year by year that they just utilize her to the best of her abilities, because she is easily one of the best. Next, Miyu Watanabe of TJPW. Said it before, she finally won the big one, and I can't emphasize enough how much that meant this year. They finally pulled the trigger, and she's proving that that decision was not only correct, but maybe should have happened earlier. One of the best talents, and has been appointment viewing for me this year. Our runner-up is likely a lot of people's MVP this year, Suri. Suri once again just had an all-pro level year in the wrestling world, holding 3 titles. She is on her A game and proving how special of a talent she is, whether it is her own produced shows, Marigold, or Stardom. She just proves how great she is. A lot of people are probably surprised I haven't mentioned her match with Mayu. I would have mentioned it if Mayu had lost the belt. I get it, Suri's a freelancer, but I don't know, watching that match, I just felt she should have come out on top, but you know, Stardom wasn't going to have their ace lose, but still, like, I don't know, her work this year just speaks for itself. One of the best going right now, but sadly, not our award winner. My award winner this year is just like the men's last year. We have co-winners because I just can't pick one over the other. When it came to wrestling this year, and when it came to women's wrestling this year, nothing has entertained me quite like watching the combined efforts of Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander. Whether tag or solo or against one another, just the best of the best. I can't wait for Willow to get a proper run with either of the titles that AEW has. I can't wait for Chris to get either, well, she's had the TBS, so I'm thinking that women's world title she'll have a crazy good run with. It is as simple as just saying that they entertained me the most this year. They had banger tag matches, whether it was against Julia and Sky or Diamante and Mercedes Martinez. They had killer singles matches like Willow going against Mercedes or Mariah. Chris versus Riho or Mercedes were 2 matches I enjoyed from her. I mean, their whole years I just enjoyed when they went against each other, as I said we'll talk about later. Just 2 special women that I can't wait to see at the top of AEW's women's division. Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander, the co-winners of the 2024 Akira Hokuto MVP Award. And now we reach the big point of the video, my top 10 matches of 2024. I've been hammering home the whole my entertainment point because of this section specifically. I've been upfront this entire video that this was just kind of not my year for wrestling. So to put it simply, my top 10 this year is quite literally the top 10 matches this year that I genuinely enjoyed and felt entertained by. And I mean, that is usually the parameters for each year, but this year that feels more true than previous years. To be frank, there is probably one honorable mention, and that is probably Hangman Swerve at All Out, and that's about it. Any other match this year just didn't feel top 10 worthy to me personally. I may have enjoyed them, but not to the point such as these other matches. And more often than not, like I said, I watched a match and simply said, that was alright. Or it felt like, again, my attention just wasn't fully grasped by it. So, like I said, to put it frankly, these are the top 10 matches that I watched this year and genuinely felt entertained by it. Even upon rewatch, when I had to, make this video and listen, I rewatched them. These were the ones that I just felt the most entertained by. So, with all that out the way, let us just get right into it, starting off with my number 10 comes from AEW television, and it is from the March 6th edition of Dynamite. My number 10 is between 2 favorites of mine from their women's division. It is Riho versus Chris Statlander. Were there potentially better matches in the eyes of others? Probably, but again, I am all about personal enjoyment, and to me this was just such a fun watch when it happened and even rewatching it. You get the fun David versus Goliath matchup, but you also get the fun pairing that is a face versus face matchup. Both women work with great speed. There are some great spots like Riho hitting a Northern Light suplex on Chris Statlander. There's also the spot where Statlander's powerbomb gets countered into a 619, which I thought was also super creative. I love the reversals we saw from both women. They are just able to create such a fun matchup in a short amount of TV time. Matches like this also kind of make me sad because I just wish Riho was more active. I know right now she's dealing with that injury, but overall I recognize what her schedule is like in AEW, and every time I'm just like, I wish she was more active. She's one of my favorites. Both these women are two of my favorites in that division, and I just hope we get to see more of them in the coming year. Riho versus Chris Statlander, AEW Dynamite, March 6th, number 10 on the list. My number 9 takes us to the land of Japan. We are looking at the women's promotion, Tokyo Joshi Pro. One of my biggest complaints with Tokyo Joshi Pro is kind of what New Japan is currently going through. A promotion whose main event scene has been sort of the same couple of names rotating the title, in desperate need of some new blood to freshen up that scene. Well, TJPW has also had that same issue, but to me personally, it feels like it's much longer, and it's not really necessarily an issue, but it's just something I've recognized. It just kind of feels like since their inception, their main event scene has really rotated between about the same 3 to 4 names, so much so that anytime a new name gets a shot, it's kind of difficult for the fans to buy into, and you really see them have this "I'll believe it when I see it" mindset. This is what heavily influences this match for me, as we have Miyu Watanabe versus Miyu Yamashita for TJPW's main title. Watanabe's rise seems impossible to pass up on, but we're all so used to, Tokyo Joshi Pro's previous bookings that you believe she has a shot, but you're not 100% in that belief. And that is really the whole foundation of this match. It plays with your feelings and makes you believe that it isn't going to happen once again, especially as it is TJPW's ace that she is going against. And again, the action is great in this one, but the real focus is the emotions of this match. It is every big move, every pinfall, especially on Watanabe, that you were sitting there anxiously awaiting the 3, awaiting heartbreak once again. I will admit, due to no fault of my own, I stupidly spoiled the ending for myself, which does semi-affect these rankings. Still though, I didn't let that spoiler affect the amount of joy I had when I finally got to watch the match and finally got to see her win the big one. It is a grand moment, and again, this match, that whole foundation is just the emotional investment and seeing it pay off in such a big time moment. Miyu Watanabe versus Miyu Yamashita, Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling Grand Princess, number 9 on the list. I didn't watch much NXT this year, but when I did, it was to watch the Nigerian beast Obafemi. While still green at times, I don't know if there's ever been a prospect in wrestling that has my attention much like Obafemi does. To me, I think his best showing in his career and this year so far was defending his NXT North American title against Wesley at NXT Heatwave. Another David versus Goliath matchup, but as my friend properly put, this is seeing Goliath win easily. You do get to see some offense from Wesley, such as his speed being a nice sort of counterpoint to Oba's strength, and it made for a lot of great spots. But this is all about Obafemi just absolutely being a beast in this match. That loud, big old chop that he gives to Wesley on the outside is amazing. The almost like an F20 basically that he gives to him, all the big time moves. It makes for such a great showcase of Obafemi's immense amount of strength, and it also has an active crowd, which is something that I would say is pretty common in my top 10 and what has definitely affected my rankings. But overall, a great match. a great prospect down there in NXT that I just can't wait to watch for years to come. They have something special with him, and it's all in their hands on what they do with him. Exciting prospect and exciting match between these two guys. Obafemi versus Wesley, NXT Heatwave, number 8 on the list. I swear, this entire year was Stardom putting their tag titles on a team I liked and then giving them such a short reign with barely any defenses. The matchup that we see today is between two teams that I like. It is the FWC, Hazuki and Koguma, facing off against Crazy Star, Mei Seira and Suzu Suzuki. This is on Stardom's May 5th edition show. I forget where it took place, but you know, Stardom typically names their show, so I have to give, or they name their shows after this like city they're in, so gotta give the date so y'all know which match I'm talking about. Again, this matchup sees two teams I like battling for the titles. So in this one, you know, a lot of times we talk about outcome affecting the way we view a match. This one, it could have gone either way and I would have been happy with it. As to expect, given the competitors, this is a very fast-paced matchup. Well, you know, including your usual strikes from Suzuki. I love the matchup. All four women make for interesting matchups and clashes of styles. You get some real great intricate tag work and fun spots. I also think a lot of the submission work in this match is an underrated aspect. The way they set up the submissions, the way they really sell the physicality of them, real good stuff. I've been wanting tag wrestling to get back in the form, and this is just one of those matches that does it for me. FWC versus Crazy Star, Stardom's May 5th show, number 7 on the list. I've been on a desperate search for more tag wrestling, and that search led me to a place called DPW. Here, I heard all about the team of Mike Bailey and Jake Something. Two guys that I obviously knew, but I wondered, how would they work as a tag team? Well, to answer that question, it is top 10 match of the year quality. That is what they produce, and of course, the match that I choose comes against another tag team that I enjoy, the ABC. As to expect with the ABC, it is a clash of styles when they are going against Jake Something and Mike Bailey. The smooth, arrogant, and flashy nature of the ABC facing off against Mike Bailey and Jake Something, who are all action. Just like Femi, Jake Something gets to show off some amazing strength and acts as an excellent base in this match for a lot of moves. Being the bigger guy, Jake Something is the main focus. And the main focus for the ABC is doing their absolute best to try and keep him out of the match. This leads to Mike Bailey being that sort of main strategist, having to use his strikes and technical work to outmaneuver the ABC's tag advantage. The crowd for this one is hot. The action goes down to the wire. It has me on the edge of my seat, excited to be watching some great tag team action. And then it ends in a time limit draw. You do not understand the anger I had just seeing that time limit draw happen. But I think that anger really just goes to show how much I was into this match, how much I was invested in it, which I can definitely say is a lot more that can be said about a lot of matches I watched this year. Just another fun clash of styles, and I'm so glad to have discovered another great tag team in Bailey and Something. Jake Something and Mike Bailey versus the ABC, DPW High Noon, number 6 on the list. Let the women bleed, let the women be violent. One of the most underrated feuds this year, mainly due to the programming it took place on, culminated in one of the best matches of the year for me. Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander did career work this year. The two women from AEW that I was heavily invested in, and their feud was great, and the closing chapter to it was equally great. It was a classic tag team breakup, and it built to this very match. And when we got to this match, what more was there to say except excellent violence? You know how they say best friends usually create the best matches because they have like this unspoken agreement to go all in. Well, these women have done masterful work in hardcore matches as a tag team, but it seems as if they saved their best for when they went against each other. I swear, going back to that whole agreement thing, it is on full display here, because I swear that the corner cannonballs that Willow does in this match look much more impactful than any other match. Like, she is not holding back a single inch. While unintentional, I think the spot where Statlander misses that swanton through the table but catches Willow in the back of her head with her foot was a favorite spot of mine. It's brutal. It definitely looks crazy, you know, it's unintentional, but again, it's a favorite spot of mine. Willow's pounce through the barricade was tough as well. I love that. I was not expecting light tubes to make an appearance, but I love that inclusion. No pun intended, they go all out, especially in these final minutes of the match. The thumbtacks, the chain, so much that goes on. And in a promotion that does a lot of hardcore matchups, these women really stood alone to me. It is definitely one of AEW's best women's matches in the short history, and I cannot state enough how much I enjoyed these two women's work this year. Kris Statlander versus Willow Nightingale, Chicago Street Fight, AEW All Out, number 5 on the list. And how about we just let the violence continue as we take things over the pond to the UK in the promotion Rev Pro. The match of topic is Dani Luna versus Alex Windsor in a dog collar match. As the women have gotten more leeway in recent years with doors opening for them to get the same type of stipulations as the men, I always wanted to see how would the women tackle a stipulation like the dog collar match. A very unique stipulation, one that is reserved for the most heated of feuds, the one that doesn't make a ton of appearances but is always such a fun stipulation to watch, one that I'm glad doesn't get overused. And if more promotions weren't cowards in my mind, I think a lot of women could pull it off the same way that Dani Luna and Alex Windsor pulled it off in this one, because they proved with this match that they could handle it well. And all it does is make me excited to think of other women who could do so well with this matchup. But getting into the match, it is brutal, and there are so many creative spots that don't really make sense when I describe them in an audio way. It is a bunch of spots that you would definitely have to see to really get what I am saying, but I'm going to try my best anyways. Not one of those spots, but there is a power bomb that is done on the edge of the chair, and you get this nice visual of the chair being bent. One of the spots that I was just describing, it's like a setup spot where they find a way to extend the chain and they use it as a clothesline. Works really well. Again, very difficult to kind of explain. Another one is Alex Windsor. She uses the chain, kind of like ricochets it in a way. Again, difficult to explain, but she uses it to like ricochet it so that the other end whips into Dani's face, and she uses that as a way to create separation, which I thought was really good, really unique way of, you know, doing that whole spot. Really good stuff there. They play around with the title of the match by utilizing an actual dog cage. By the end, both women basically donning a full crimson mask, and it caps off a very heated but top 5 worthy match of the year. Dani Luna versus Alex Windsor, dog collar match, Rev Pro Revolution Rumble, number 4 on the list. One of the best pieces of wrestling this year for me was watching Konosuke Takeshita's run in the G1 Climax. I have always had trouble committing to watching wrestling tournaments in full, but this year I just knew if I was going to commit to anything, it was going to be watching Takeshita's run in the G1 Climax. And for me personally, you guys saw how I described it in the video earlier this summer. One of the best G1 Climax runs of all time that I have personally seen. Every match just had great wrestling and great story to it. Takeshita really worked well as both a heel and face in this tournament, really depending on his matchups. The way he was just able to flip that switch effortlessly for each opponent was great and really showcased why he has that ace potential. He had unreal chemistry with so many of New Japan's guys that I was just thinking about how perfect he was for just promotion and to really help their main event scene. And while it was difficult to pick just one, ultimately I think his best match of the tournament came against the man that puts the G in G1 Climax, Hirooki Goto. Going into this match, I believe commentary notes that Goto is a wrestler that Takeshita looks up to, so there is this respect between the two of them in this match. As you would expect, the strikes are loud and stiff. As the match goes on, you really feel the stakes of the tournament. It feels like a true battle for 2 points. Strike after strike, kick after kick. We even see Goto pulling out all the stops by hitting a huge sunset flip off the top rope. Takeshita eats a nasty headbutt from Goto. The crowd is so into both men, but as the match really reaches its climax, they are fully chanting Goto's name. They are in awe at the kickouts. They are vocal for each big move. Honestly, like I said, one of the biggest X factors for this entire list when coming up with this list, but really also my top 3, was just how loud and invested the crowds are. They are fully invested into the matches in a way that I hope to recapture in the new year, which, shouldn't be a problem if I can get more matches like this one. Pure emotion, pure passion, a hard-fought affair from 2 of the best. Hirooki Goto versus Konosuke Takeshita, New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax, number 3 on the list. And in the land of Japan, we are going to stay. And as I always say, I do not know anything about Noah, and I will probably butcher the names of some of their talent as I always do. But getting into Noah, what do I know about Noah? Well, the one thing I know is the tag team of Hayata and Yohei. As I will always mention, I learned of Yohei because of his match with El Desperado. And this year, like I mentioned with the Mike Bailey and Jake Something submission, I was in search of some tag team wrestling. And in that search, I stumbled upon Yohei's tag team with Hayata. And they've just slowly turned into one of my favorite tag teams this year. One of my favorite looks in wrestling overall. Their presentation from the theme music to their attire is great. Their run with Noah's junior heavyweight tag titles has been a great watch, and I've been enjoying a lot of their matches. But I think this one is their best match so far. Once again, the crowd is just a big influence into how into this match I am. The moment this match ended, when I first watched it and I put it into my spreadsheet, the first thing I did, because I knew this was going to end up somewhere in the top 10, I made sure to put in parentheses, this had a hot crowd. And again, it is one of the biggest X factors for this top 3. The crowd are just super into this match. And I think one of the things that really amps that up and is an underrated part of this match is the setting itself. They're in a very smaller venue, so it makes for a more intimate crowd, but it also makes for an interesting match as they have limited ringside space, which they do utilize at times. They allow for some outside spots, but for the most part, things are kept in the ring, which I don't know, for me personally, it makes some of the flashy moves that they do stand out more. There is less space, they're more confined, and that's what makes those moves stand out. There is just something interesting about when matches are limited to the confines of the ring. Getting into the rest of it, all 4 men in this match work fast and fluidly. Other than the beginning when things are in that sort of feeling out phase, I don't know if there's a single spot where the 4 men don't work well with one another. Kotoge and Ohara do a great job of really building sympathy for Hayata and Yohei as the crowd is very vocal for them and vocal for the champs. I think another thing that adds to it that some people might find hilarious, the majority female crowd, or maybe it's just a loud vocal minority, I don't know what it is, but there are a lot of female voices in this crowd and they add to this match because they just shriek in support of the tag champs. They shriek in horror anytime damage is done to either of the two, and it makes for just such a great experience. And the final minutes of this match see both sides work so fluidly as a tag team with close falls on both sides. Just amazing tag work and an overall fun watch. Hayata and Yohei versus Kotoge and Ohara, Noah Sunny Voyage, number 2 on the list. And now we get to the match that I really have to thank for the majority of my list. If it weren't for this promotion, I would not have watched Tokyo Joshi Pro, Noah, or DPW this year. We take our final trip of this list to the promotion Marigold. I have Marigold to thank due to them being on Wrestle Universe. You're probably confused as to why I'm mentioning all this. Well, it's quite simple. When Marigold was announced, I was wondering, well, first off, what is the promotion going to be like? Where are we going to be able to see it? Are they going to have their own subscription service? And the main reason I was asking all these questions is because if you've been following this channel, you know they currently have who is my favorite modern women's wrestler, Utami Hayashishita. Because I am such a big fan of hers, I wanted to be able to watch her match. I want to be able to watch him, keep up with her. And so when they announced that Marigold would be on Wrestle Universe, I chose to sign up. I had signed up previously, but because I didn't watch many of the promotions consistently, I canceled. But because Marigold was going to be on Wrestle Universe, I signed up again solely to watch Marigold, solely to watch Utami Hayashishita. But as we saw from my list, I may have not watched a lot of wrestling this year, but my search for wrestling led me to a ton of different places and led me to watching wrestling from a plethora of different places. I don't know if you've noticed it, but AEW is the only repeat promotion on my top 10. Every match, AEW gets 2, but every other match is from a different promotion. And it was something I was so happy with. It wasn't something I intentionally tried to do, but it just made me happy to see the state of wrestling right now, where even if I didn't enjoy it, there was so many options out there. But let's just get into my number 1 match, because you guys already saw it. But I mean, is anyone surprised? To the surprise of no one, it is the match that I did a video on that I literally called the dream of all dreams, because it was my biggest dream match that I honestly thought would never happen. I talked about it in that video. Io probably locked in with WWE for a while. I don't see Utami coming over unless, I don't know, she hasn't shown interest in coming to the US, so I just never thought it would happen. But yet here we are, Io Sky versus Utami Hayashishita at Marigold Summer Destiny. 2 of my favorite women's wrestlers currently, and it was a big time headliner match for this show. There is so much story behind this match. The entrances are so great. The gear that these 2 women wear. It is the Queen's Quest founder versus a former Queen's Quest leader. The 2 women are a perfect pairing. Utami's strength versus Io's fast-paced offense. Io is super happy to be back in Japan, and they love her back there as well. Io loves being in Japan for one reason alone, and it's the fact that she knows she can unlock everything. She fully lays into Utami with a ton of stiff kicks. There are some great spots on the outside. The counters are amazing and fluid. The story elements of the experienced Utami having to battle an even more experienced Io Sky. The springboard poison rana off the top rope is insane. It almost ends badly, but it is an insane spot. The crowd, like I said, is just super happy to have Io back in Japan. They are loud for each woman's moves. The 2 pull everything out of their arsenal. It is just a match that I had so much fun watching, and of course I'm just going to rate it so highly. It is 2 of my favorites and a match that I've wanted to see for years. And you heard me say it, but like the best thing I can equate it to, I know it's a different scenario, but when I think back to some of the things where I'm just like, man, I never thought I'd see it. One of the big ones that stands out to me is the fact that I got to watch Shibata wrestle live. And similarly with this match, I just didn't think it was something I was going to get to watch. Many dream matches don't happen. Many dream matches, when they happen, don't live up to the expectations that you set for them. And yet, here we are with this match happening, much less it happens in Japan of all places. It is an absolute joy to watch. It is one of my favorite matches of all time, sentimentally especially. To no surprise, again, for like, this is like the third year in a row. I know you guys didn't get to see my 2022 list. I'm still really debating, always going back and forth on whether I want to do 2022 retrospective for music and wrestling, but for the third year in a row, my number one match is a video that I made a video about. My number one match this year, just the best dream match for me personally, of course, and just the match that I've had so much joy watching, rewatching over and over. And hey, I look forward to being predictable next year when Swerve versus Utami is my top match of 2025. But that's the top 10. We close it here. Io Sky versus Utami Hayashishita, Marigold Summer Destiny, number 1 on the list. And with that, the book of 2024 is closed and sealed. I know there are still matches and shows going on, such as the Continental Classic, World's End, but this is where I'm choosing to close my year in wrestling. This is where I close my 2024, a year in wrestling. A difficult year for me, one where my interest was really almost close to all-time lows. Not really though, because I still think back to some of those years in the 2010s where wrestling interest really got low, but I don't like ending on such a negative note, especially on a channel that I try and really highlight positivity. 2024 was a renaissance year for so many fans, and it made me happy to see so many having such fun getting back into wrestling, and I'm happy that they were able to enjoy it and reconnect with something. For 2025, for myself, I just simply hope for better. I look forward to improvements. I look forward to what the year will bring. I hope to continue lessening my interactions with the online community like I've done each year. It's just a bunch of negativity from people who genuinely don't even care about the product they're watching. They only care about their arguments online. So that's why I always advise to just steer clear and just enjoy watching on your own. Watch what you want, because at the end of the day, why bother talking about things you don't enjoy? Why bother engaging in just pointless arguments? Just simply as it put, watch whatever wrestling you want. Overall, all I want to say is thank you all for joining. I hope you enjoyed my top 10, the awards, all the different matches. I hope you all enjoyed this year in wrestling. Merry Christmas to all, because this is probably going up on Christmas as a gift to you all. And I can't promise anything about the music one, because I am still writing that script to the point of this recording. Probably even when this is uploaded, I'm still writing, but I have set a cutoff date for myself. So whatever I haven't listened to by that point, oh well, we got to get through. We got to close the chapter in 2024 music already. That will, I don't know how soon, but hopefully I can come out soon. That's my next big project. And then after there, who knows? But thank you all for joining for this one. Like I said, I wish you all the best, and I just can't wait to see what the year of 2025 brings to all of us, especially in the world of wrestling.